Hi, this is Carla, and welcome to There Might Be Cupcakes' 100th episode. I am not alone on this questionably momentous occasion. With me is my friend and my co-author in progress, Robert Ford. There needs to be a word for that, for co-author in progress. If there is, I don't know it. Thanks so much, Bob, for being here with me. I knew I wanted to celebrate this milestone with you.
Sure, thanks for having me. I love being here. Yeah, and
Sure.
just co-author is good. You know, it's
Okay,
it
that works. So I want you to tell my audience all about your stuff and to brag heavily. Are you frozen, my dear?
several
I think you're frozen.
of the other authors and Don Bowden and I have something.
All right. I think you froze there for a minute.
Did I? Okay.
Yeah.
I was seeing you frozen on the other half. That's all right. That's all right. Um, do you want to start that over?
Yeah, just brag.
I'm Robert Ford. I am the author of I don't know how many things right now. To reach a certain point, you've lost count. But the last horror novel that I had,
There you go again. No. Oh no. You're freezing again.
also a couple of westerns.
You're
That's
freezing
bizarre.
again.
My internet connection is unstable.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. I don't know if it's me or you or
That's bizarre. I don't know why
yeah.
I'm not sure why it's unstable.
This is the beginning of a horror movie.
Yeah, that's not good. That's not good. All right, let me try something and we'll try this 1 second again, okay?
Okay.
Right back.
Okay. Every time he starts bragging, it cuts out. He's in a basement, so it might be him. He went somewhere else to try to have a good connection, but it's a basement, so it might be him. I'll take my headphones out when he reads. He's going to read the beginning of Rattlesnake Kisses. So I'll take my headphones out when he reads so you can hear him, okay?
This again. There's I reset the hub. There's
Okay.
storming that's been going on and I'm
Uh,
having an issue, but we're going to give this a shot and see if this has fixed things.
Either that or it's zombies.
Yeah, it could be. You never know. You never know. Never know. All right. I don't even know where I was at this
You were
point.
bragging.
Oh, I was bragging, going off my thing. Okay. Yeah, no, I'm the author of Burner and The Compound, Inner Demons. Um, Collaborating with John Bowden and Matt Hayward, and working on a project with you, of course,
Yeah.
and even delving into westerns. So yeah,
Yep.
I'm kind of all over the board. Yeah.
Weird westerns.
Yep. Yep. And straightforward westerns too.
Yeah. True.
My western, They Rode Pale Horses, was kind of an old school nod to all the westerns that I grew up loving and watching,
Mm-hmm.
and Eastwood and Charles Bronson and that whole, amazing group of actors. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah. When did you start writing?
The sort of trope answer to that is uh, kindergarten, actually. But I think my first professional, like, serious publication happened in 2011, I think.
Mm-hmm.
That was when a novella of mine, Samson in Denial, came out.
Mm-hmm.
And once that happened, I had published short stories and things before that, but Samson in Denial, I would say, is my first, serious endeavor into that.
Mm-hmm.
And haven't looked back since. Yeah, yeah.
Good. Uh, and how did we meet? Do you want to tell the story or do you want me to?
You know what? You tell the story because I know exactly where we met, but you go right ahead.
All right. I signed up for Bob's class on how to read your writing in public. And I read my story, Holly Jolly Christmas. I took it to workshop. And um I remember the moment I knew we were going to be friends. It was when we finished. And I asked him if he knew why I had named the main character a certain name and why I'd named the town in the story a certain name. And he didn't. And I told him it was for Gilderay, the serial killer. And he said, "You son of a bitch." I was like, I think we're already friends.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. And then everywhere I went at the convention, strangers stopped me. Were like, "You're the one with the story. You're the one with that story. I can't wait to read that story." And I'm like, what is happening?
Hmm. Hmm.
He told everyone.
I did. Well, it was the concept behind it was so unique and so different. I was like, yeah, no, this is gonna go places. I can already tell.
But yeah, it's the one I read on the podcast. But yeah, that's when I knew we were going to be friends. And you about half stood up out of your chair too.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like, oh my God, he's coming for me. Or we're besties. One or the other. I'm gonna die or we're new besties.
No, that was such a fun class to
Yeah,
to
it
be
was.
involved in. I just enjoyed everyone in the class. It was a great time.
Yeah. Right. And I want to talk about your reading life because, of course, that's the heart of the podcast. Duh. And because I'm also nosy. When did you start reading
Hmm.
and when did you remember it being an important part of your life?
Sure, sure. I I'm an only child, and
Hmm.
I grew up on a farm in the northern part of Maryland and was left, to my own devices quite a lot. And so at a young age, I was reading everything I could get my hands on.
Hmm.
And it started out like a lot of young kids. I was reading, E.B. White with Stuart Little and
Hmm.
Charlotte's Web. The There was an author by the name of Ruth Chu, and she had a series of books for young adult and children, called, it was like The Wednesday Witch, and I think The Would-Be Witch and The Secret Cave and things like that.
Hmm.
And I just remember I loved reading her work, and I would seek her out at the book fair and things like that. And so that started kind of setting the tone for what things I was interested in. And for a while, I had an uncle who lived with our family. And when he moved out, he left, some boxes of things behind. And I found a paperback copy of Carrie. And I was 9 years old at the time. And I remember reading this, and I didn't completely comprehend certain things. Obviously, as a 9-year-old should not have comprehended in that book, but I didn't. I hid it, the fact that I was reading it, because I knew my parents wouldn't approve of this one.
Mhm.
But it really affected me because for the first time, it really hit me that, wait a second, this is a person's job. Like this is what they did.
Mhm.
And it was just such an unusual book. The formatting of the paperback, just everything in it just really kind of blew my mind.
Mhm.
And from that point on, I jumped from there. I still continued to read horror, but I was reading a lot of Conan the Barbarian uh,
Mhm.
novels, and I ripped through every one of those that I could find. And my parents were always into series like The Twilight Zone and Tales from the Crypt and things like that. So everything sort of collided, and I just kind of started writing, little stories here and there. And I knew it was everyone, a lot of people talk about the imposter syndrome when you're,
Mhm.
in the writing crowd. I felt that from a really early age
Mhm.
because I didn't know exactly what the differences were, but I knew that I thought differently when it came in terms of writing and reading than most of my classmates.
Mhm.
When I was in the 10th grade English class, we studied poetry for a while, and I had already been writing poetry for quite some time at that point. And I remember there were four girls in the class. We had to read a poem of any author we wanted to in front of the class.
Mhm.
Well, four of my classmates, they all wanted to read one of my poems. So
Aw.
by the fourth time, I got up and read one of my poems. And after class, the teacher, this incredible English teacher that was really influential, named Jane Schenk, she kind of waved me over after class, and she's like,
Mhm.
"Yeah, this doesn't happen. What's the deal here? I've never had four students do this,
Yeah,
ever." And so we talked for a while, and she was really the first teacher who I would say was really instrumental in guiding me into a certain path. And she was just fantastic. I mean, I think in that toward the second half of 10th grade, I had started writing this werewolf novel, and it's trunked. It's so deep in the trunk that it'll never see the light of day. But at the time, she was just really encouraging and gave me great feedback, and different things. And that's kind of how things progressed from that point on.
that's
It
amazing.
continued there, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like we had a similar path. Mine was John Bellairs instead
Mhm.
of the witch books. And I read Christine at 9.
There we go. See?
So I knew about periods. I did not understand the smell of new cars and pussy.
Yeah, that'll leave a striking impact on a 9-year-old, I gotta tell you. Yeah.
But my parents had this deal with me that I could read whatever I wanted, but I had to come to them with my questions instead of my grab ass friends.
That's fair.
Yeah, and so I get the correct answer. So I actually asked my mom, and we actually had that conversation.
Yeah, sure. No,
I was
that
9,
was
and let's
real.
see, let me do the math. She was 30, I think, 31,
Mhm.
and that was awkward.
Oh
But
yeah, I bet.
but she told me, um, and we had nothing to compare it to because we'd had a Vega and an Oldsmobile, so yeah. But yeah, I was mesmerized. And my babysitter would let me stay up and watch The Twilight Zone at 11 as long as I didn't tell anybody.
Hmm.
And I hauled ass when we heard the car or the key in the lock.
Yep.
But the show before The Twilight Zone was The Women of Cell Block H.
Oh,
And
I remember that series.
that messed me up. I'd see
I
like the
remember
last
that.
10 minutes of it and go, why do these women want to do all this stuff to each other? Just who
Yep.
are women in jail? What?
I swear that the creators of The Orange is the New Black,
Uh-huh.
they all grew up watching that series. They had to. There's no way around it. I had to be an influential thing.
And my babysitter would turn it on and there'd be like the last 10 minutes and she'd be all paranoid. She'd be like, you're going to get me fired. And so there'd be all this tension and women pounding on each other and kissing and just, it was a lot.
I remember that series. I hadn't thought about that in years. Yeah. Oh, wow.
And what was the other one? Tales from the Dark Side.
Yep.
That was another one
And
I got to stay up for.
there's something I'll tell you, that series, I watched it, loved it, but to this day, those opening
The
credits,
opening credits.
they freak me out, and I don't know why. It's the guy's voice along with that music, and then when
The
the whole thing,
inversion.
yeah, when the whole thing flips negative, I
Yeah.
just get a chill up my spine every single time. And I've still I've broken that down in my head. I'm like, nope, I got nothing. I have no idea why, but it still freaks me the hell out. No, I know exactly what you mean.
I need to rewatch the movie with Blondie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been a while for me for that one too.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. That's funny that we've had a similar path.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Hmm.
Oh me. Um, so what are you reading right now? Are you working too hard?
I've been kind of knee deep working really hard lately.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a while since I think the last thing that I read was a John Bowden's upcoming poetry collection.
Hmm.
That's what the last thing that I've read. That was a couple weeks ago, and it is. I adore John Bowden to death, but I don't know. He has such an amazing, unique voice,
Hmm.
and his poetry collection is gonna blow people's hair back. I
I
mean,
can't wait.
it is haunting, and it hits a nerve. Like I have thought
Hmm.
about some of those poems for since I've read the collection to begin with.
Wow.
And it's another side of John that people haven't seen because so
Hmm.
many people are familiar with his fiction, and I think he's got I think his novella Thrift Store Puzzles is either out now or it's coming out like any day. But
Hmm.
that one is another one that just blew me away. I've told him that his voice, he writes like an old truck driver's 8-track tape. It's like whatever the lyrics were from that, that's how he writes. And he doesn't
That's
try.
fabulous.
Yeah, he doesn't try. It's just how he works.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating to me, his work. And
Hmm.
but no, John's a dear friend, so I tend to, get an early read on most of his stuff. But yeah, I'm very excited for that to come out. And I think the collection is going to be called My Eyes Are Just Holograms. And it's a
I
fascinating,
love it.
yeah, it's such a great collection. I can't wait for people to check that out.
Oh, I can't wait to read it. I may
Mhm.
have to bug him. I'll flirt with him a little bit.
There
Hi,
you go.
John.
You'll shake them up.
So, what's the difference for you between writing alone and the process of writing with us, writing with John, writing with me?
Sure, sure. It depends. When I'm writing for myself, I just kind of flow with it.
Hmm.
Typically in years ago, I would have a general idea for, say a novel. Sometimes it depends. Like Burner, I had no idea what the hell was going to happen at the end of that.
Hmm.
Um, but now I've kind of progressed because I do have so many projects going on. I wouldn't say that I tightly outline, but I have a pretty good idea of the start, the middle, and the end, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I have to keep producing and keep going. So it's a little more contained for me and restrained when I'm writing for myself most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to collaborating with somebody else, it feels like Christmas. It feels like Christmas morning. Every time I get another, chapter or a section or
Uh-huh.
whatever from somebody, I'm like, hot damn, let's go. Let's see what what they did. Um, and it's exciting. It's writing, everyone says it, writing is a very solitary art, to
Mm-hmm.
do. It's, if you don't put your ass in the chair and write, nobody else is going to do it for you.
Yeah.
So it's a very solitary thing. And I think that's why getting to conventions, and like where we met in, in
Mm-hmm.
classrooms and workshops and doing things like that, it really is like it's being around kindred spirits. And you're like,
Mm-hmm.
I can relax a little bit here and just enjoy myself because these people are like me,
Yeah.
that's what it is. So when I'm collaborating with somebody, it feels like Christmas morning. It's and especially with John, because we have not outlined anything that we've worked on,
Mm-hmm.
completely pantsed. And let's see, I think it was our novella Cattywampus.
Yeah.
That bastard uh wrote, I think it was 2 or 3 chapters in a row. He ended it with like a gunshot went off, and I'm like, John, you are killing me here. And of course, he's giggling evilly, going, figure it out. So it's a blast to have that back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
Same with our project. When we were
Mm-hmm.
going back and forth, it really felt like a free flow, sort of narrative that we were
Mm-hmm.
working on. And it's a tremendous amount of fun. I mean, it always is collaborating with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
maybe,
it's been like a dance.
yeah, no, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to see, for me, because I've seen other writers collaborate, and you can see a definitive line where one writer has done something and the next writer has done something.
Yeah.
Their voices don't exactly flow and blend necessarily as well as they could have.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but I think, looking back over our project and looking back over John's and
Mm-hmm.
with Matt Hayward and I as well, you can't see that harsh shifts.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like a free flowing narrative that is going on. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, I start studying how you work, or John works or whatever, and see that voice, and I can feel my work shifting slightly. And at the same time, I can feel other people shifting slightly
Yeah.
toward me. So it's a beautiful blend, of voices and content when we put it together like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I pants, to use the
Hmm.
NaNoWriMo word. I write the way Stephen King says he writes.
Hmm.
I do research because I'm autistic and I've never met a rabbit hole I didn't go down. Um, and as you've known, what did you say to me? You have trouble keeping up with me?
I think sometimes you sent me an avalanche one day. I was like, I could work on this for the next 6 months, and I'm not going to be able to keep up. I can't get all this.
Yeah, and it probably took me 45 minutes.
See, that's all right though. That's all right. It's that sort of thing. I would always rather have too much than not enough,
Yeah,
especially when it comes to research.
yeah.
And that's one thing. And depending on the novel that I'm working on, well, I take that back. Almost every novel I have to do some sort of research for.
Hmm.
Some are different than others. For the compound, when I worked on that, I had to do a research on the security protocols for prisons. And
Hmm.
then I kind of modified them to make them work. I had to look at how a military siege would occur, things like that,
Hmm.
strategically wise. On Burner, that research was intense, to
Yeah.
say the least. I read so many case studies and watched documentaries on human trafficking and
Mhm.
um, watched interviews with, women and men who had been trafficked, and that was a rough one. The research on that was pretty rough. When I was done that, I felt like I couldn't take enough showers to get rid of that,
Yeah.
that stuff. That hung with me for a while. But yeah, I think, any sort of research like that we dig into, I think you almost have to, so you can write truthfully about it. If
Hmm.
you understand it, then you can write from a place of truth and sincerity
Exactly.
like that.
But of course, I'm also, I'm not joking when I say my hero is Harriet the Spy. I want to know everything and write everything down.
Sure, of course. Yeah, yeah. No, I totally get it.
But when I sit down to write, it just, it's like the characters tell me what happens next.
Hmm.
I meet up with them and they go, well, here's what you missed.
Hmm.
You know,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. And that's when they're really starting to come alive, and the story is really taking form of its own.
yeah.
Hmm.
So did you bring anything to read today?
I did. I was looking over a ton of things, and I realized I don't think that I've ever read the beginning of Rattlesnake Kisses.
Okay,
So
cool.
yeah, I'd like to give that a whirl.
All right. I'm gonna take my earphones off. It's working.
Okay.
No, it's switched to the. It's arguing with me. Right.
Is it? You good?
All right. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yep.
All
You in
right.
good shape?
I can't hear you
Okay.
anymore. Hold on.
Uh-oh.
All right. Say something.
Hello. You good shape?
I can't hear you.
You can't hear me
I
now?
ruined it. Oh, let's see. Aha. Mhm. Okay, now.
How about now? Good to
No,
go?
I ruined it.
Okay. Chapter 1 of Rattlesnake Kisses. The woman's hands were like featherless birds. They flitted and bounced around the boy's ankle with a palsied precision. The nylon cord wrapped around his thin ankle once, twice, and then a third time before its path led to the cinder block. The boy was cold and shivered. The breeze from the river reached up over the edge of the bridge and stroked him to goosebumps through his thin t-shirt. Mama? His voice was a small thing in a big empty, too minor to carry an echo. It's okay, son, the woman gasped. Her lips were raw, livid things on a skull ravaged white. Her eyes were hiding as far back as possible in dark caves. Water flowed from them freely. She looked at the child and tried to smile, but it was broken. This is the plan, his plan. I'll be right behind you, and we'll be together and happy forever. We shall be warm and safe in the hands of God. She cocked her head, and he saw again the bruises on her face, the scab that lived at the corner of her mouth, the purple storm cloud that marred her cheek. Her bony fingers worried over the knot she was making. Will I have friends there? He leaned to fret at the rope around his ankle, tight and itching the skin there. So many sunshine, more than you can count. She pulled the knot tighter and stood up, her back making tiny popping sounds as she did so. She laid a hand on his head and stroked his hair with the thumb. I can count pretty high. The boy beamed and looked up at his mother. The sun was in his eyes, and her face was just a blinding glow. I know, Pumpkin. She paused and drew a quick and deep breath, kneeling down to resume her task. You're so very smart. She finished weaving the rope through the hole in the cinder block and tied it into another cumbersome knot. She picked up the heavy brick and sat it on the edge of the bridge. She then picked up the boy and sat beside him on the moss-slick railing. She looked at him and ruffled his dark hair. Her lips shook as though she were choking. choking on all the things she wanted to say, but instead chose to swallow. Her eyes were frightened rabbits. Mama? Yes, son. Will you smile when we get there? Oh, honey, it's all I'll be able to do. She leaned forward and kissed his forehead. He smiled and looked into her eyes, and then she pushed him off. Chapter 2. The man sat up rail straight from his slumber. His long but thinning hair stuck to his head and neck with thick sweat, the kind usually reserved for delusionary fears and deathbeds. He ran a shaking hand over his head and then wiped the moisture on his pillow. He sat quietly for a moment before he decided to let the tears roll free. He slowly lifted his left leg and ran trembling fingers over the deep scar around his ankle. If he closed his eyes, he could still feel the rope. He cried in the dark, and his throat felt as though it were full of river water again. He was about to lie back down when the phone rang. He picked it up before it screamed a second time. Yeah, he croaked, swallowing back the tears. Dallas? A voice asked timidly. Texas or TV show? Um, TV show? The voice on the other end of the line was swaddled in uncertainty. Season premiere reached 10K. No pets, no kids. Well, it's my Dallas interrupted. Nope, not the right channel, man. Mystery is on another one. We need to get cable for that kind of show. You dig? He tried hard to mask the annoyance in his rusty voice. His lungs were crying for a cigarette. There was a pause, pregnant to the point of dilation. I think, yes, this one. It's playing at the Elks Club Lodge. They run great movies there. There's a show at midnight tomorrow. More silence. I'll bring my kid and we'll meet you there. Okay, I'll wear my blue jacket. Have the popcorn, Dallas said as he put the phone back on its cradle. He lay back down and stared into the dark pool of the ceiling. It was like that place in the river where the shallows met the deep holes at night. If he stared long enough, he could see his mother floating there, her hair a soft halo full of branches and fish. He often wondered if she were in the hands of God, until he remembered he wasn't a believer. He reached out and grabbed a pack of cigarettes from the nightstand. Instead of sleeping, he lay there smoking until the sun came up.
I love it.
There you go.
Is that now? Is Rattlesnake Kisses a novella or a
Yeah, it's a
novel?
novella that John Bowden and I wrote. It's
I love it.
we started we started calling it the Knuckle Bucket series.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's book one. Each book is sort of a standalone story, but it's all set
Mm-hmm.
in the same world that we've developed. So we are so close to finishing Black Sav, the third book
Mm-hmm.
in the series, and then life got a little crazy and squirrely. So, but we've been talking over the last month. We're like, all right, man, it's time to finish this up and put this thing on. But it is easily the most off the rails of the three books that we have written, and that's saying quite a lot.
That is so cool. All right. I have a quote about writing that I wanted to get your feelings on,
Sure.
if you don't mind. It's from Marilyn Monroe's husband.
Okay.
I mean, Arthur Miller.
Yeah, yeah.
The best work that anybody ever writes is the work that is on the verge of embarrassing him always. What do you think?
Um, I would agree with that absolutely, with a slight adjustment.
Mm-hmm.
There's a story that I wrote years ago called Racing the Milk.
Mm-hmm.
And it is by far the most emotionally brutal short story that I've written.
I've heard you read it.
And yeah, it's brutal. Like it destroys the audience. It's
Mm-hmm.
a charged thing. And when I wrote the first draft of that, I sent it to one of my best friends, a guy named Doug, and I just he's not a writer. I just wanted some straight reader
Mm-hmm.
feedback and impression. And when he replied, he said, he was floored, but he said, I don't, when I read this, I feel like I shouldn't have read this. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like this is a voyeuristic thing that I shouldn't be reading. Like this
Mm-hmm.
is vulnerable and raw and just so emotional. He's like, "Are you sure that you want to send this out to get published?"
Mm-hmm.
And my reaction, my first thought to that was, absolutely. If that's the
Mm-hmm.
kind of reaction that you got, then absolutely. And I
Mm-hmm.
think, I think I know I would say probably 98% of the things that I've written, there's absolutely parts of myself and
Mm-hmm.
in what I've written. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and for me, whenever there's been times of emotional pain or grief or heartache or something like that, I've always tended to use that for fuel. We can paint it in pretty metaphors and adjectives and repackage it, and it's cheaper than therapy.
Yeah.
Shouldn't replace therapy, I think, but it's a way of exercising those demons and getting them
Mm-hmm.
out. So, yeah, on the verge of being embarrassing, yeah, absolutely. I would 100% agree with that. And and I think, I think to a degree it's gotten a lot tougher though in a lot of ways to do that. I think in today's sort of climate of social media, I think a lot of people are afraid to march up to that line and maybe take a step past it even,
Mm-hmm.
because I think it's not just the writing field. I think it's comedians. I think it's a broad scope of people. They're afraid of writing a piece of fiction that might offend someone,
Yeah.
and I think I don't really agree with that. I think it's our job as artists. Whether
Mm-hmm.
you're a fine artist, you're doing sculpture or painting or whatever, or as a writer or a filmmaker, a photographer even, I think it's our job to provoke emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And, if people get pissed off and angry, well, okay. You know,
Mm-hmm.
if people cry about it, if they laugh about it, if they're terrified and they have terrible nightmares, well, we've done our job. That's what
Mm-hmm.
art is supposed to do, is provoke emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people have gotten very scared of doing that, for fear of getting canceled. I think if we're pursuing a story, it has to ring true, and
Mm-hmm.
if a character happens to be, if he's a terrible villain and he's a racist or homophobic or whatever this moron is in life,
Mm-hmm.
in your story, well, we have to make that character true.
Yeah.
Or if we don't, it feels diluted and it feels lukewarm and it doesn't feel true, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, when we're writing things, if we push it to the point of embarrassing ourselves, but it makes sense and it's true to the story, well then yeah, I think we have to have the courage to do that.
Yeah.
If it's pulling out and exposing ourselves to a degree and being vulnerable and being raw, if we as artists, as writers, are okay doing that, then yeah, I think we should.
Mm-hmm.
Because the thing is, technology and social media, it was supposed to bring everybody together and make it closer. But I think it has brought a tremendous amount of distance between everybody. And, when I write certain things, um, racing the milk is, I'll go back to that one. That's a perfect example. When I have read that to live audiences, I've had people at the very end, I've had people not stay. They've left the room immediately, but they have found me in the hallway privately later and told me things. They're like, I don't know what research that you had to do on this short story, but that's exactly how things are,
Yeah.
and it impacted them emotionally. And I think to a degree, people are almost afraid, embarrassed or shy maybe to
Mm-hmm.
say I can relate to what you wrote. You know,
Yeah.
it's a relatable thing and it impacted me emotionally.
Yeah.
And that's what we're supposed to be doing. And I think it's
Hmm.
that sort of thing that people forget. If we're hurting and grieving, but we're writing about something, there's going to be other people that relate to that. It may
Hmm.
not be identical, but it's good. People are going to relate to those sort of things. And I think the only way to do that is to let yourself be exposed and vulnerable when you're creating
Hmm.
work. So yeah. Yeah, I think he was right on with that quote.
Yeah, I know. If I send, if I save what I'm working on in Google Docs, and I kind of have that feeling of, here's this thing I did by myself in the middle of the night. I shouldn't be showing you this, that I did a really good job.
Yeah, pretty much. That's exactly correct. That's how I feel. 100%.
All right. Well, I'm gonna let you go because I know you're super busy, and the more you get done, the more we get to write together, right?
That's absolutely true. And
All
there
right.
is an avalanche of things that are going to be coming out for me in the near future. Yeah.
All right, but before you go, where can my listeners find you when you aren't pulled away in your writing office?
They can find me at robertfordauthor.com,
Hmm.
and I'm pretty much on the majority of social media. Uh,
Hmm.
you know, Twitter seems to be kind of dead. I don't really get any interaction on there. So Instagram is probably the best place to find me over there, Bob Ford.
You need to use your blue sky, please.
Yeah, all right. I will take your advice on that. And I keep getting requests all the time to be on TikTok. So
Really?
yeah, I keep getting a lot of requests. I keep seeing Burner mentioned over there quite often. And
That's awesome.
yeah, so once I clear out probably another 2 to 3 projects and get them completed, yeah, I'll probably jump over to TikTok and kind of get involved in that a little bit more because I keep getting asked to be over there.
Well, that means I have to come back to TikTok.
All right, I'll hold you to that. Hmm, hmm.
Oh no, just don't know. All right. Well, before you go, I have to ask, when I'm able to visit, what kind of cupcake should I make you? What's your favorite flavor?
Be a surprise.
I like it. You got it. All right. Go work. Go work.
I'm going to. I'm headed back into editing right now, matter of fact.
All right.
All right, dear. Well,
See.
thanks so much for having me on today. It
Oh,
was a blast.
thank you. I'll see you soon.
All right, bye.
All right. Bye.